welcome Dan Schiz to Home is Where the Dark Is. Man, thank you so much for dropping in. It's great to meet you in person, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. And firstly, I want to start with Powerman 5000. Like I checked out your articles and your press, and really interesting, like your story. So we'll get into some other stuff, but firstly, I think our listeners really like to know like your story of joining Powerman.
It's funny. So the story of me joining Powerman kind of started a few years prior to me joining the band, because it all had to do with me becoming friends with Taylor Haycraft and Merv Douglas, who are currently in the band. Mm-hmm. And so I think the story starts with the day that I decided to start a Marilyn Manson tribute band. That's how everything kind of snowballed. So I used to live in Tarzana, and there was a venue there called Petey's Place, and they had like jams and stuff like that. And I literally lived across the street. And so I think I signed up for one of the jams, and I just like walked over with my guitar, and I ended up playing a Stone Temple Pilots song with a drummer who would become Pretty Boy Floyd's drummer.
Living Dead drummer, Nick Mason, and also a guy who ended up now playing bass for Avril Lavigne. Okay.
And so after we played that song at that jam, I kind of just threw out the idea of like, hey, it would be cool to like start a Marilyn Manson tribute for whatever reason. And they were both like, yeah, all right, sounds good. If you could find a singer, you know? And it just so happens that I found some guy who looked exactly like Marilyn Manson.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was the name of that project?
It was called Deep Six.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? I've seen footage of you guys.
Yeah.
Floating around. And is that still going or no?
It's still going, but
okay.
I'm no longer in the band.
Oh.
Yeah.
By choice?
Yeah, by choice. I quit during the pandemic after Manson was kind of getting canceled.
Oh, okay.
Because I was kind of like, there's no way anybody's going to see us now, you know?
Well,
and they were like, wow, we could probably make more money. And at that time, I didn't really agree. But
okay, yeah.
I don't know. I've actually like kicked around the idea of asking those guys like, hey, we should like get the like OG lineup together and play like one last show, you know?
Fuck it, man.
But
Manson's back.
Yeah, Manson's back, you know? And since then, I've met people like who've played with him in the past,
Same.
You know? So, you know, I don't know. I hear different things, but I just don't think he is completely like this monster that everybody makes him out to be.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, all the people that I know that have been in his band have been like pretty great people. So, there's that. You know?
So, okay, Petey's Place, Manson tribute, and then what?
Okay, so basically, Manson tribute, there was a jam at the Viper Room called the Sunset Jam, which no longer exists. But it was every Monday at the Viper Room, and our first show was at the Sunset Jam, at the Viper Room. And prior to that, I've always wanted to play that jam because it was exclusive. It was invite only. It was cool because it was kind of like my way into that world. And the house band, or the bass player for the house band, was Merv from Powerman. And Eric Himmel, who put on the Sunset Jam, I think he left Powerman by the time I started playing there, but that was kind of part of the draw, you know, where you could jam, and sometimes there would be rock stars or musicians that play for rock stars that would just pop in, or you know, so it was always like a great place to go and like watch awesome musicians or meet awesome musicians. So basically what happened was we played a show, and it was kind of like, it was our first show, so it wasn't like the best show on the planet, but I guess the bass player, I guess he was scouted for Avril Lavigne at that show. Like his name was in the hat, so like the musical director, I guess came and saw our crappy Marilyn Manson set and scouted him.
Okay.
And I think he like ended up getting the gig the next day or something like that. So that was cool.
Wait, when you say crappy, are you being sarcastic, or was it just because it was the first show, or did something go wrong, or?
No, I mean it was just like, you know, it was just like a typical first show
from
a new band. Yeah. You know what I mean? For me, it was awesome. because it was like my first time playing the Sunset Jam, and two, and this is something I'll kind of get into with Powerman stuff too, but just like personally, putting on like the makeup and getting that outfit, like I kind of feel like instead of it being a mask, it actually is like kind of a mirror where you're kind of like showing people like the side of yourself that you wouldn't necessarily express without it. And I guess as an extension of that to Powerman, I kind of feel like now that the makeup is off, when I'm up there on stage, I'm just completely myself. And that, by performing, it's actually like a kind of therapy.
Do you prefer it?
Like playing with Powerman versus...
No, I mean without the makeup, like just being vulnerable like yourself, no makeup, no mask, you know what I mean? Do you prefer that performing like that rather than having a mask or makeup?
Yeah, I do, but I think like when I first started with Powerman, I didn't know exactly how I was going to fit into that band. Okay. Like visually or even just my presence. I wasn't sure exactly like if the rest of the band were going to accept me as a member of Powerman, if the fans were going to accept me, if I was going to internally feel like I was part of the band.
Yeah.
And I know I'm kind of jumping around, but I kind of feel like now at this point, I've been in the band long enough that, okay, like I can inject myself into this. And now when I go on stage, it's just as Dan Schiz. It's not as like me trying to pretend to be a member of Powerman. It's more just like, okay, this is me.
Yeah.
This is me expressing myself like visually and, even emotionally or musically or whatever, if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. So you're just kind of wondering how you're going to fit into that. So was it did it take some time to get used to, or did you just kind of feel it right away, or how did that feel?
No, I mean, it was something that like I really had to own. And it took a long time. It took a couple tours. And I think like the funny thing is like people think that when you get a big gig or you do a huge tour or something like that, it's going to completely change your life and everything's going to be happy. But it was hard. Like the first year I was in Powerman, we did, it was like the first tour back from the pandemic. So it was awesome. You know what I mean? Like we played to some pretty big crowds and stuff like that. And that was all new to me. And so, and then I'm kind of like feeling like a little bit like a fraud, like, am I even going to fit in, And then the next tour was with Rob Zombie. So it was the Freaks on Parade tour. So it was us, Static X, Mudvayne, and Rob Zombie.
Hell yeah.
And, prior to that, I was like in this Marilyn Manson tribute band pretending to be John 5. Now I'm on tour with John 5.
Yeah. That's crazy. I'm sure that felt surreal for you.
It was surreal.
Yeah.
But it also kind of almost destroyed me, but in a good way. And I'm kind of glad that it happened because he's like the most amazing guitar player ever.
He's definitely one of the best guitarists for sure.
Yeah. And I don't know, like just hearing him play every night was kind of like a little bit like, fuck, I have a lot of practicing to do. And sometimes like, you forget like how good you actually are and what you bring to the table.
It's true.
And so, I kind of had to reconcile with like the fact that there's things that I do, no offense, John, but there's things that I do that might be just as good, if not maybe better artistically. I can't play guitar as well as he is, he can, maybe not as like iconic as a performer, but there's things that I bring to the table too, and that like every artist has their own voice and it has something that is amazing. And it's not always up to us as artists to like say what's amazing. Sometimes it's also like the audience too.
Absolutely.
And there's some people that might see John 5 play and be like, okay, that's not for me. And there's sometimes like I'll just play something like kind of shitty and people come up to me and they're like, yeah, man, that was awesome. And I'm like, why do people think this is awesome? But I've come to terms with the fact that like maybe that thing that I'm playing that sounds like somebody falling down the stairs or something like that is what's unique to me. And that speaks to people.
I totally relate with you there. So how did it feel like you're sharing the stage with, some of your guitar idols and like what you said about, I think it's really what you said confidently, like how you said what you bring to the table, like you have your own unique style and how you own that with confidence. I think that says a lot about you as, as a person and as a musician, because it takes a lot and a lot of experience to own that and to know that you're good, but know exactly what you're good at, if that makes sense. Because there's some guitarists that they'll kind of just practice and they're just not really. It takes a long time, or some guitarists never really figure out what their niche is as a guitarist, or as a musician in general, and they're just kind of like blindly just try. I just want to get good, but you don't really take the time to realize, okay, like I really shine at this type of playing, and then hone in on that and just really stand out. And I think what you said is very confident, and I like that. So, so you're playing these killer tours. You're in Powerman, and so you said it's not always what you think, like when you get a big gig. So what was that experience for you?
It really comes down to kind of what I was saying previously, where, you're still you. You know what I mean? Like, if you have like internal thoughts, good or bad, they don't go away. They're still there. You're still you. You still have to like brush your teeth and take a shit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, you're still human, and so I'm kind of glad that it happened, because I kind of feel like it was like a journey, and because when some sort of success happens to you, like, things change. Like, you're not always going to have the same friends, and like people are going to perceive you differently or whatever, and it's not always like awesome. Sometimes it like kind of sucks, but I think if you kind of switch your mindset around and come out the other side, then you're kind of like, okay, well, this is actually pretty awesome. It's hard for me to like come up with specific examples, but it's just, I don't know. I guess like the biggest example is there's people that I talk to on a daily basis before Powerman, and like there's two kinds of people. There's people that just still see me as Dan, and then people that see me as Powerman, like Dan from Powerman. And I'm like, why? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we were homies,
Yeah.
I'm like, and they're awesome. They're nice people. Like, but they always like kind of treat me like, hey, I'm Dan from this band,
Why do you think that is? Because I relate, but why do you think that happens?
I mean, I think it's personal to like every individual, but I think it happens because like there's only so many spots, in the music industry, and at least if you try to do what I'm doing, the hired gun kind of thing, you have to kind of be chosen. You can't just be like, hey, I'm going to join your band,
Right.
You can have that mindset like, hey, I want this as my career, and and then hopefully the chips fall in your favor, but you can't just be like, hey, I'm going to join Slipknot. Or maybe you can,
Well,
but you have to be a little bit more flexible.
yeah, I agree with you there. I think there are some people though that are very persistent, and like they go after one goal for years and years and years, and they bother people for years and years and years, and sometimes that works. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Like you were chosen, so like the stars align for you in that regard. So I see what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like sometimes like people like, they see rock stars or whatever as like this mythical thing, because it's not always something that everybody can just do,
True. I want to know your thoughts on this too, because I think a lot of people have the perception that, once you're in a famous band or a known band and you're doing these big festivals and tours, that, you've made it. You are now rich or very wealthy, and that's so far from the truth. So maybe if you join a band like Metallica or something, bands on that level, and people kind of just saying, well, you must be doing so well, like, wouldn't it be nice, that kind of thing. But a lot of people don't realize, like, well, a lot of these bands aren't getting the guarantees they used to on these tours, and then you split it between band members and management. By the time you get your payment, like, it's a lot lower than most people realize. It's crazy, and it's different for every band and every contract, of course. But that's one thing I've definitely realized too, is people think like, oh yeah, you must be doing so well now, but maybe you're just getting by. But how do you feel about that?
Well, I think success is something that is individual, Like nobody can define success for you. That's something you have to define for yourself. And so I think with like, I feel pretty fortunate, and I feel like I consider myself a successful person because I think it has to do with like my mindset about Powerman. So like we don't tour, 365 days out of a year, we don't. And the reason for this is because we don't want to like run the band to the ground. You know what I mean? We don't want to like just bother people so much and just come to their town so much that it kind of waters us down. Yeah. And so like, if we did, that would be great. Like for me, like financially, but I mean, after a while, like it wouldn't, you know what I mean? It wouldn't make sense for us. So, I think when you think about it in those terms, like I think just being smart about it and having like better quality tours and having shows that are really fucking awesome that people are excited about is more important than just being like, hey, we're always going to come to your town like 3 times a year, And so, I mean, I feel like that's having that awareness, I think is successful too. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, because I mean, otherwise like, if you're playing in front of like nobody, it's no fun. Like even if you're playing in Powerman, so.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. Like success means different things to everybody. And some people equate it with finances. Some people equate it with fulfilling their purpose, whether it brings a lot of money or not. And I totally relate. Like to me, success isn't about money. It's nice, but for me, it's about fulfilling your purpose in life and what you feel you're meant to do. And, we're fortunate to, you and I have something in common that we're fortunate we have found what makes us passionate in life and what we feel our purpose is. And not everyone finds that or realizes that in their life. So that alone to me, it means a lot to me. And, I've had all kinds of ups and downs in my career, but yeah, so success is subjective, definitely.
I guess one point I want to make is that if your definition of success is, hey, I'm going to make X amount of money, what happens when you make X amount of money?
Right. It's never enough.
Exactly. So like, I remember when I was a kid and I was working like some shitty retail job, and then I ended up working like another retail job, but it paid like commission. And I was thinking like, oh my God, like what kind of things could I buy once I make this kind of money? And then, and then you make like a better commission. So then you, like for me, I went and bought a PRS guitar, and then I was like thinking like before I got it, like life would be so much better once I get this guitar. And then you get it, and now you're like, okay, what's life going to be like now? Right. And I kind of feel like joining Powerman was like that. Like I remember I told myself for a long time, like, man, if I could only do like a tour that was like a week long, like, like if I could at least do that, then I'll know that I made it, or
then
something
I'll be
like that.
happy.
Exactly.
Once this happens,
So then I think that was like a thing to wrestle with as well. Like I feel like after I got off the Rob Zombie tour, I was like, okay, I totally completed my pipe dream. Like that was something I never thought would ever happen, ever, like in a million years, and it did. So how do you wrestle with that? Yeah.
I think a lot of people struggle with that too. Like once they reach that ultimate dream goal, and then they do it, and then they're like, wow, that was great. But then after, I think this also relates to people who, they go on tour, like the dream tour, and then they get home and they're depressed because nothing's happening. And they're like, well, now what? Like I reached that ultimate goal, but what do I do now that the phone isn't ringing, there's no shows, there's no touring, I have no idea what's next. And then it's like turns into the opposite of, the ultimate excitement. It's like depression. I've known people that have that kind of post-tour depression or slump or whatever. So yeah, have you ever experienced that, like getting off like a tour and you're just kind of like, oh, like a little bit of being a little down about it, or you just kind of, you seem very optimistic, so I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because like I think like on the surface, like I seem really optimistic, but always like inside I'm kind of like freaking out. But but I think for me it's just like trying to be grateful for the little things and see like each little win as something to celebrate. And I'll kind of give you an example, and I hope this isn't like something shitty, but like the last tour that we did, I didn't think was going to go very well, like before we embarked on the tour. And because it's like we didn't really promote it too much, and like, you know, like we weren't really touring with like the biggest bands in the world, but it ended up being fucking awesome. And maybe one of my favorite tours ever. And like we sold out a bunch of shows, and like we did a tour. It was us headlining, and then September Morning opened for us, and then this band from like France called The Great Alone.
Okay.
And I was just like, all right, we'll see what happens, you know? And so I think I've come to realize like people that love Powerman are going to come see Powerman. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And if they like the bands that open up for us, like, cool, that's awesome. You know, that's a plus. And so like not everything has to be like, you know, like Rob Zombie, Static X, Mudvayne, you know what I mean? But it ends up being amazing. And so I guess that's like what I'm trying to say, is just being like, I guess it comes down to confidence. Like, hey, we're Powerman, we're awesome, we put on a great show. But like, you know, you kind of have to go through it to like realize like, all right, cool. Yeah. Like our fans, like they don't really care.
Yeah, I read in your articles and stuff, like, you know, you've had quite a journey, and you moved here in 2016.
Yeah,
am I correct?
That's right.
So you kind of touched on like how your story, like adapting in LA and like the struggle. So now that you've been here 8 years, like how do you feel now? Do you feel at home here, or is it still kind of a little bit rocky for you, or like how are you feeling about living here?
That's a really good question. Because things have kind of changed a little bit. So I love living in LA, and it's definitely my home. I had a rough upbringing, and so I never really kind of considered any place my home, really. You know, I don't have like this place where I'm like, that's my hometown. You know, that's where I go back to on the holidays. Like I stay here on the holidays, you know? And so, so this is like my home. But things are kind of getting a little bit scary. And I think like everybody, no matter if you're living in LA or living in Pittsburgh or Wyoming or whatever, but you know, cost of everything is going up. So sometimes like I wonder, you know, whether it would be advantageous to go somewhere else, but I don't know.
I'm there with you, man. I've lived here my whole life, and I agree. Like things are very scary right now. I don't know how most people do it living here, to be honest. Like I don't know how the average person with a normal job, normal salary, like gets by here. It's just the price of living has gone up so much, and yeah, you know, it's just so. I totally relate with what you said. It's like it's very scary right now. So yeah. I mean, you know, you can go to, like, I know a lot of people that went to Vegas, a lot of people that moved to Austin, Nashville, Florida, because the you know, cost of living is much lower. But even over there, they're going up because so many people are moving from LA and from different, you know, New York. New York is the most expensive state, I think. Just insane rents, insane costs of everything. But yeah, it is very scary. So yeah, are you hoping to stick around? Are you looking at other options, or how are you feeling about it right now?
I don't know. I mean, I saw that in El Paso, Texas, where it's really cheap, that some big company might be like moving in there. And so I'm kind of thinking like, man, maybe I should like buy a property there. You know, maybe that would be like really fucking smart. And
could probably get a great deal.
Yeah,
definitely.
You know, like get it cheap now before it gets like gentrified or something like that. But who knows? It could also be a horrible fucking decision. I end up losing everything. But yeah.
Where were you born?
Connecticut.
So have you been hopping around, or like you said, your childhood was a little bit rough, but like, so are you trying to find like somewhere to call home, or are you okay with like jumping around and until something really feels right, or how do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel like at this point in my life, I most likely probably won't move out of LA. I'm pretty like, you know, well grounded here, for lack of a better term. And also it just feels like home. I guess in a way that like when we like as a band like Powerman, like when we walk into like some place in like Kentucky, we definitely look like we're aliens from another planet. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm just like a regular guy here in LA. you know? And so that's kind of cool. It's like you could walk outside and just be you, you know? You don't have to be like be stared at by some like old guy, you know?
It's true. It's very eclectic here. Lots of different cultures, lots of different personalities, lots of different everything. But yeah, what's in the future for you with Powerman? Like, you guys have shows, tours coming up, or what's in the future?
Tour kicks off again in 2 weeks. And so it's us, we're headlining Sponge and Tantric and a band called Closure.
Okay.
So that's the tour package. And it's going to be awesome. I'm actually like really excited for this tour. And I think because we're coming off the heels of the last tour, you know, like I said before, it went really well. I kind of feel like I'm going into, or I will go into the tour with that mindset and that momentum in mind. So I'm super stoked. But plus we have a new album out, Abandoned Ship.
Hell yeah.
So, you know, we're going to be playing some new stuff and kind of mixing up the set list a little bit. I'm not going to reveal any surprises. You know, everybody's going to have to like check out the tour, see what's going to be going on with that. But, you know, it's always good to do new things. And we're also going to be playing like venues that we've never played before. So, you know, it's not going to be like, oh, yeah, I've been here before. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
Nice, man. Did you write songs on this record?
No, I did not.
Okay.
So, but the cool thing about this record is Matt Junkins from A Perfect Circle produced the record.
Ah.
And so a little fun fact is I'm a huge A Perfect Circle fan.
Me too.
And I think it was like one of their first tours back in like the early 2010s. I got gifted like a backstage like VIP experience thing, and I think it was like the first tour with Matt in the band. And you know, it was one of those moments where like I see this guy on stage and I'm like, I want to be like that, you know, when I grow up or whatever. And now I'm in a band that, you know, is playing songs that he worked on, you know. So for me, it's really fucking cool.
Hell yeah.
I did submit some stuff. I'm not sure if Spider ever listened to them, but they were shit, to be honest with you. And I'm actually kind of glad like the material I submitted got rejected, because it just made me solidify like working on my own stuff more and just being like, okay, like the pressure of like working for somebody else is off. Now I could just focus completely on my own shit. And my own shit is completely different from what Powerman does. And so
I noticed that. Yeah,
you know,
I checked out your stuff.
Yeah, it's really different. I'm not sure if, you know, if anybody who listens to Powerman is actually going to like any of my stuff, but, you know, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, do you do any promotion, like any PR to push your stuff out, or are you just kind of relying on, you know, your social media and whatnot?
So that's a good question. So the record is still being worked on. I released 3 singles so far. But like the original plan was kind of finish a song, release a song, finish a song, release a song. But now I'm kind of like, you know what, fuck that. Like I want to finish the record, you know, and then figure out like what I'm going to do, and how I'm going to release it and everything like that. Yeah. Because I just think like, obviously you need a lot more than just like posting on social media to make an impact. Mm-hmm. But I've also been fucking burned by PR companies in the past.
Same.
Like, to be completely honest, I'm not sure exactly who to trust. I'm not, you know, especially with like my baby, my first solo album, you know what I mean? Like I want to make sure I'm doing it right. And I know I'm going to make mistakes like when I release it, and, you know, things aren't going to exactly go the way as planned, but, you know, I definitely want to be like, okay, well, the record's done. So now I get to put all my energy into the promotion aspect instead of, okay, cool, I just released a song that I'm promoting, and I'm also simultaneously in the studio finishing a song that's on the same album. Like, I kind of feel like that process didn't really make any sense. So I'm finishing it first, and then I'll worry about the other shit after that. So.
Yeah, I like that process better. Of like, if you're gonna do an album, or if you're gonna do singles, like at least record them all at the same time and then release them separately, because then like when you put together, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine when artists will do singles at a time, and then they want to throw it all on an album and expect everything to sound the same like an album. You could have each individual mix like mastered by the same person and try and get things to sound similar. But if you're gonna put them all out on an album eventually, for me, like, because it's what I do, I always like try to advise the artist, okay, like let's do the whole album, and then you can release the singles as you go, or later, like, so that they're all cohesive, and then when you release it as an album, it sounds like an album instead of a compilation of singles. You know what I mean? And even so, like, I don't necessarily mind that either. If all the mixes and masters are great, you can still make it work. And I actually like records where the mixes between songs aren't exactly the same. Sometimes that sounds really cool and interesting, but for certain genres, you kind of like to have a pretty similar mix throughout the record. So I get that too. But yeah, man, that's exciting. Cool. So I would like to ask you a question that it's like the theme question of the podcast. So feel free to, if you want to take a minute to think about it, or if you prefer not to answer, that's cool. But what was the darkest period in your career so far, and what did you do to overcome it?
That's a great question. So the darkest period of my career was the very same day that I got a text from Spider, are you available for tour? Literally the same day. So prior to me joining Powerman, I actually did merch for the band for like 2 or 3 shows, and I ended up doing a video audition like a couple months later, and then I didn't really hear from Spider after that. Like, we had a phone call conversation. He kind of told me like, hey, we may or may not need another guitar player for this upcoming tour. And so I sent like the videos, and then I didn't really hear anything. And then I got COVID. Uh-huh. And like I got COVID like bad, like I was totally sick. Like, COVID totally sucked. People tried to like play it off like it wasn't a thing, but I don't know. I was like out for 2 weeks, like, bedridden. And then I got a text from Spider, like basically that I'm not going to be doing the tour. Like, the other guy like came back, and, and so I was just like devastated. I kind of felt like I failed, and I was thinking about like, like, why did I quit that Marilyn Manson tribute band? Damn it. Like, that's where I went wrong. Like, no, but I remember there was this one day, and I'm sitting like, I'm just sitting like in the dark, all depressed. I think the night before, like, this girl like threw water in my face at the whiskey. Yeah, at the whiskey, like this one really weird girl. But anyways, so I'm like all depressed and like heartbroken, and like, no tour, no girl, like, and I'm thinking, I'm like, should I just move somewhere else? I kind of felt like, did I do everything that I could do here in LA as a musician? Did I get as far as I could, and I kind of felt like pretty down, and like, I obviously like went to a really dark place in my mind too. Just kind of feeling like a failure,
Totally.
And then like an hour later, I get a text from Spider, hey, are you still available for tour?
Wow.
And the crazy thing was, I immediately said like yes, and it was kind of like one of those deals like, hey, here's a set list, we have rehearsal tomorrow. Kind of things. So like, yeah, so I basically just worked my ass off like all night, all through the next day, showed up to rehearsal, had pretty much all the songs down, ran through the set, and the rest is history.
So he was going to do the tour, and then he couldn't do it, and you got the call. So what happened? Like, why did that happen?
Oh, okay. So yeah, so just to clarify, the guitar player that I ended up replacing, like, he wasn't sure whether he was going to continue with Powerman. Okay. For whatever reason. I don't want to speak for him, but
for sure.
But he plays for Orgy now, which is awesome. Ty Oliver. So that all worked out. So everybody's happy, hopefully.
How do you feel about the modern music industry and Spotify and streaming? And I always like to kind of get into this because I've found that people have very different views on this. So I'm just curious, like, where do you think the future is going for music, and what's coming after streaming? Like, where do you see things going? Because right now, like, it's all about Spotify and streaming and that. And obviously we have this new wave of AI in music and technology in general. So how do you feel about that? Like, where do you think our industry is heading?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at pretty much anything. And so I think there's a lot of positive and there's a lot of negative. And I also think there's like huge opportunities for artists that I feel like everybody seems to kind of ignore. And so I'll kind of talk a little bit about each thing, I guess, like streaming, what I think the missed opportunities are, and AI.
Okay.
So I think with streaming, one thing I want to say is like, and I hope, nobody gets offended by this. I hope you don't get offended.
Please go for it.
I think
Yeah.
there's other options other than Spotify. So
Of course,
so
yeah.
Tidal, for example, they now changed their pricing. I think for $10.99, you could get 360 audio. You could get what's the Dolby surround sound audio? Atmos.
Yeah.
For $10.99, you have access to like their highest quality streaming. It's all FLAC files. It's not like shitty MP3s. So Spotify, I think, is like a typewriter to me now. And Tidal is like a laptop. And I don't think any consumer should give Spotify any money anymore.
Wow.
I think they have an inferior product, and they really need to like step their game up if they're going to charge people money at this point, because Apple Music and Tidal are fucking destroying them.
I'm so glad you said that, because I 100% agree. I don't use Spotify. I've had Tidal for pretty much since this started, and I preferred it. Like, to me, it sounds way better. Like, the quality, I can hear it. I know most people don't care, but I definitely hear it. I think it's better. Like, the user interface is better. It's more streamlined, and I do like that they pay out more for the artists. So yeah, I completely. What about AI? Like, how do you feel about what is happening with music and this AI generation that we're approaching?
Sure. Well, okay, so I'll kind of answer two things, because I guess point number one is you don't have to stream. You can still buy records. That is still a thing. You could buy digital copies off a band's website. You could buy records off Bandcamp and then you own it. You could still buy physical CDs and vinyl. You don't have to stream. That doesn't have to be like your only option. There's all these other options. So I just wanted to say that. Another thing too is like, I think bands should also encourage their fans to purchase things. Like, they're always just like very passive about how they promote music. Like, yeah, stream it on Spotify. And it's like, yo, you could ask your audience, if you could ask your audience to like go see you at whatever city that they live in, you could ask your audience like, hey, like, buy my CD. There's people out there that like, as long as you like keep talking about it, people will do it, because people want to support artists that they like. So I feel like the fact that artists aren't doing that is kind of dumb, especially with social media. Just get on your phone and tell people to fucking buy your shit. Yeah. Period. So now that I have that out of the way, I think with AI, I think there's some people that are really gonna like obviously like it, and there's some people that are never gonna use it or whatever, or never listen to artists that are generated by AI. I do think, like, for me, I don't know, like, at first I was like really against it. I was like, there's no way, I'm not going to listen to anything that was AI generated or whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know, the past 10 years in the music industry, like, do I really want to listen to the shit that people have been writing, like, anymore? Like, yeah, but I don't know. Like, at the same time, I'm kind of curious, like, if AI could generate something that we haven't really thought about, like, that could actually help us grow as artists too. So there's,
that's a good point. Yeah,
there's a lot of positives. I don't know. I kind of feel like, and I know this is super controversial, but I kind of think AI would make making music eventually in the future a lot easier, and a lot of people could be like more self-sufficient. Like, I don't see myself ever using, this is me personally, because other people are totally going to use tools to do this, but I don't see myself ever writing a song with AI ever. I don't see myself ever being like, oh, let me consult AI to like help finish this lyric. That process is what I fucking love. Like,
well, yeah, you're a songwriter. You don't need that. That's for people that like maybe are just starting, or they don't know how, or they just want some random idea, but that's what you do. So,
Yeah. Or I could see somebody getting kind of stuck and be like, you know what? fuck it, the tool's there. I'm just going to go and fucking finish the song, you know? But for me, it's like getting over that hump and getting over that, like, okay, I have one line left. I can't think of anything. And then you think of something fucking awesome and it's the icing on the cake. That to me is like the best part of the process. But it's hard, you know what I mean? And it's not fucking instant. But I could see myself like using like AI as like a digital assistant, like a digital, like, hey, help me do the shit that I don't want to do on the DAW. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, kind of be like a virtual like engineer, so to speak. I think that would be fucking pretty cool, because then I could just shit out music like all the fucking time. I'll have that like vault like Prince had when he died, and I'll just have like hours of fucking music, you know? But I can't, because I rely on people, and I like relying on people. You know, I'm not one of those artists like, you know, I'm not like Trent Reznor where I could just like make a whole album on a laptop by myself. I like the collaborative aspect, but I think like the people that I do collaborate with, they'll appreciate my AI assisted demos in the future, at least. You know what I'm saying?
I like your viewpoint on it, because you have a positive outlook on it, and I think that's great. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to be another tool. You don't have to use it. You can use it if it inspires you. And I think what you said about how maybe AI will generate like new genres like that have never been made before, and then you can be inspired by that and make your own music based off of that. That's kind of cool. So I think that's a great way of looking at it. If you don't want to talk about this, I totally understand, because we just met, but we do have something in common. Like, I also lost someone who took their own life. What do you do to keep yourself mentally healthy? Like, do you do therapy, or do you have specific things that you enjoy doing that help, like working out or any kind of activity like that?
So that's a good question. So I think for me, and this is just for me personally, but I think when it comes to, you know, like when we were talking about success in the music industry, and that, you know, if you get to those certain benchmarks, then you feel like you're going to be happy or whatever. And I think for me, when my mom died, I feel like I could have either destroyed myself or I could have made myself better, you know, and I chose to make myself better. And I think for me as an artist, it's my responsibility to have benchmarks that are outside of myself. And so I think kind of now that I've owned my role in Powerman, and just kind of like owned my life and everything like that, the next step for me is focusing outside of myself and helping other people. So my biggest goal in playing with Powerman, these upcoming tours, is just to inspire other people and like make people feel like they're a part of something and that they're not alone. But even just like aside from that as well, it's like everybody's really unique, you know, and you do have something to bring to the table. Like my first tour, I was kind of convinced, like, I'm not even sure if I fit into this band. You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of the lamest dude ever. Why am I playing in Powerman? I'm supposed to be cool. Powerman's cool. I'm not cool, you know? But then kind of like realizing like, oh shit, man, I am fucking cool. I'm cool in this way, you know? And I think like if other people just kind of heard that, then they would think that they're cool too, you know, and maybe want to stick around. So I don't know. I mean, obviously it gets a little bit more complicated than that, but I kind of feel like, hey man, if I could do it, anybody could do it, because I'm kind of like the lamest dude ever, you know? And, you know, if I could get to the point where I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm not all that lame. Maybe I'm a little bit kind of cool. Then, you know, I think whatever it is that other people want to pursue, they could do so if they just kind of put their mind to it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's, you know, it's in this industry, and I don't know, just in the creative arts, like it's very easy to be very self-critical and hard on yourself, and I'm extremely hard on myself. So I understand when you say things like that, like, do I even deserve to be here? I'm not cool. They're cool. Like I can totally relate to that. But I think you know, it's part of, for me, like I've had imposter syndrome like for many years, and but I do feel like what you said, we do all have something unique to bring to the table, and regardless if you feel it or not, if you get the gig, you deserve the gig. That's how I feel about it. And maybe there are exceptions where some people get gigs that, yeah, I feel like some people get gigs that they don't deserve, or they very quickly do not any longer have the gig, but that happens. But I feel like, you pay your dues, you work hard, you get the gig, you deserve the gig, And I don't know, just like when you said like you're in Powerman, but you feel you're getting used to it and you don't feel like you're fully in the band yet. But I think that's just a natural part of, any like new relationship. You're like feeling the waters, feeling it out. Like, okay, how do I feel in this? Do I deserve to be here? Is this too much? Is this so? I totally think what you experience is normal, and yeah, everyone should just be a little bit less hard on themselves and just let it flow. Anything you'd like to plug, or anything you'd like to talk about before we wrap it?
Yeah, I'd say just like really quickly, I guess to kind of tie a bow on everything else. So yeah, that Rob Zombie tour, I was on tour with John Five. He's amazing. I was on tour with Ryan Martini, the bass player for Mudvayne. They were both amazing, but everybody's amazing in their own unique way, and those who are watching this or listening to this, you're amazing in your own way. And, obviously I play in Powerman, but I do have a solo album that will hopefully be done this century. And it's very different from, one, anything else I've ever done, but two, very different from, the band that I'm known for playing in. And I think coming full circle, like that's kind of my statement as an artist. That's like my testament, is that like I can do something that is completely me, and just not be afraid to like release something that is kind of out there and left field. And, everybody has their strengths. I have my strengths, and I feel like on this album I'm playing to my strengths. And that's something I'm really proud of is, I don't know, I'm just doing something different, being different. And I don't want to, sound like anybody else or be like anybody else. I feel like I'm at the place in my life where I just want to be Dan, and I'm totally okay with that.
Thank you so much for sharing, and it's been great chatting and getting to know you a little bit, and future success with the tour, and I wish you much success in the music industry, and I'm glad you're doing your thing and you're enjoying it and you're living the dream, man. So thank you for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Cheers. Thank you.